Good evening and welcome to the Ping Q&A investor session. My name is Justin Starboard, and today we're going to dive into what we've been up to, talk about some exciting milestones that we've hit, and introduce the newest member of our team. I'm really excited to welcome back Jane Lowe, co-founder, and Rob Witten, co-founder of Ping. Guys, thanks for doing this tonight. This is great.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you again.
I know, it's like, I need a green sweatshirt to match you guys tonight.
Well, we'll see someday.
All right, sounds good. There has a lot going on, but before we jump into all that we're going to talk about, today this session is for our investors and an opportunity for those that have already made the pledge to participate in our journey, and those that have not, to ask any questions that they would like to have answered, so that they can learn more about the technology and our mission. So what we want to do is have people go grab a cup of coffee, or maybe it's some other beverage this evening, and save those, put those in the chat for us so that we can answer them, and then put us all on the spot to answer some of the tough questions that we've had. So Rob, we'll jump into some of the milestones that we've hit, and talk about the momentum snapshot that we're in right now. There has been a lot going on, including, I'll start with the first one, number 4 most raised on Wefunder just last week, and second time in the last 2 months since we did our last Q&A.
Oh yeah, I mean, the response on Wefunder has been amazing. Super cool. We closed out our early bird, so that was awesome. Just really cool to see all that happen. Over 200 investors now, which I think is really, really neat, because so many people are from our network and from family, and we're just super excited to have everybody on board. We are actually calling in from our new office space, our new very affordable office space that's just right next to our commissary and right across the street from our pod. So it's super convenient, allows us to expand, be able to, we really outgrew our little trailer workshop, which we were super proud of, but it got cozy when you have 4 engineers all trying to, work on a project in the same space. And we have interns coming in, subsidized interns, which is great for us. One we have in from Northeastern, it's working super well. And so now we have an extra workshop, more dedicated space, and allows us to really iterate super quickly, get everything working here, and then drop it into the pod for the actual testing. We've had a couple of big investors, D3 VC invested, also had a great investor memo that came with that. So that was exciting. King's Crowd, they gave us a 4.3 out of 5 on our rating. Just really cool. And also just an excellent write-up there. And on our reservations, on our franchisee reservations, we have $1.8 million worth of future pod reservations. So we have 12 people now, just added another one, signed up, ready to go. And some of these are people we know, people in our network that are actually really excited about getting a hold of their first Ping pod and running that site. So yeah, lots of just amazing developments, including bringing on our CTO, which I think people are familiar with, but that has worked out super well. So really excited to have him joining us here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to have the opportunity to bring him on in just a second. But before we jump, Jane, did we miss anything? Are there more? It feels like there's been such a wonderful response to, from our customers as well, when we've been out there testing every single day. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, that was a lot, and I'm really proud of that. Thank you to all of our investors and supporters along the way. I think we have a few tech updates later that Rob and Rory could get into that show traction. It's just really exciting. So yeah, but let's get to it.
All right. Well, with that, we have a new member of our team. We've interviewed him on our podcast, The Morning Ping. It hasn't gone live yet, so this is going to be really the first introduction to the public outside of the pods. Rob, talk about our newest member of the team, Rory McKean.
So we first met Rory through Mass Robotics. He was one of the advisors there. We liked him back then. And after we moved to the site, Rory wrote and said, "Hey, I'd love to come help you set up sometime." And at first, I didn't know how we'd be able to use somebody for a couple of hours, but Jane kept pressing me. It's like, we need to talk to Rory. We need to talk to Rory. And so we did. And Rory's like, "Hey, I would be interested in a lot more than just helping you set up." He came and basically just started working before we had any agreements in place. And it worked out super well. We checked with a bunch of folks. Helen Grainer is one of our biggest investors and has been an amazing advisor. The moment she caught wind of like, we're thinking about bringing on Rory, she's like, do it now. This is an amazing matchup. And when something seems too good to be true, we always question it a lot. And so we called references from all the amazing startups that Rory's worked on. Everybody said the same thing. This guy's great to work with. It happens his skills overlap perfectly with a lot of the things that we're doing. And I tell you, like, it's really just kicked us up into high gear. So super happy to have Rory on board. Really excited to have him join us for this Q&A now. And I'll let him tell everybody a little bit more about himself.
Hey guys, thanks Rob. That was super nice. Yeah, so my name is Rory McKean. I'm a mechanical engineer by training, but I got into sort of been in robotics forever. Studied mechanical engineering at MIT, and then I went to grad school at Rensselaer, got a master's in mechanical engineering as well. And that's where I really got into like actually building robots. So I got into factory automation when I was there, machines that make things, which I always found super exciting. And then, yeah, since graduating, I've been working at a series of companies. I find myself attracted to startups and small companies trying to have a go at stuff. So I worked at a company called Harvest Automation for a while, making outdoor robots that move potted plants around greenhouses and nurseries. So like picking up round pots and moving them very precisely over to a different location. And
now we just move smaller pots.
And now they're just like smaller pots.
It's cups instead of pots. Yeah, same idea, same form factor. Yeah, it's all good.
They don't have plants and soil, but it's all the same thing. And I spent a little bit of time at a company called Super Pedestrian, and we were making an electric bicycle wheel, which was my first time working on consumer hardware. And that was super interesting. It was a VC-backed startup, and we were going like from a concept. When I joined, they had, I think 2 or 3 working prototypes, and we were jumping into full-scale production at a tier 1 contract manufacturer, which was super exciting. And I learned a lot, and it partially because it didn't go super great there. But we learned a ton about the manufacturing process. And then from there, I left and I co-founded Tertill, which is a company making a solar-powered weeding robot for home gardens. So we did a crowdfunding campaign and got started and figured out how do we manufacture the robots, and we built thousands of robots and learned a lot of lessons along the way of like, here's how you go from like a concept up to like working production and making thousands of things. Yeah, no, and Tertill, sadly didn't make it, such is the fate of some startups when there isn't like enough of a customer fit.
Beautiful design though. Like I love like opening up a Tertill or like, wow, this is amazingly well done. But yeah, just not enough people have gardens in their backyard.
Not enough people have vegetable gardens that are between 150 and 250 square feet that have mechanical borders. It's getting the fit exactly right is hard. And the robot did exactly what we wanted to do, which was reassuring because I have a technical background and like this is what we wanted to make, and we made it and it worked. And it was all in all a really good product, just not enough customers there.
And that happens, right? Where you are building something and we talked a little bit about this the other day, where, you're building something where there isn't a demand, but you've built something incredible. And you mentioned that it's sort of the inverse here. joining Ping, there's a huge demand for being, quick through a drive-through to having your, your order made exactly as you'd like. And the challenge is then, creating that and scaling it. And, you mentioned that was one of the reasons that was so appealing to join Ping. Talk a little bit more about the mission and what made it so important to start working before a deal is in place, and then work out in the 3 months ago it was still cold and snow. So there's passion there.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, this was like Rob said, I had met Rob and Jane. I don't know, it's probably a year ago. I don't know. I should remember when this was.
About a year ago, Master Robotics.
Yeah. No, and got along great with them, and it was so I've been keeping an eye on them certainly as things were coming along, and then when it sort of became clear, like, oh, it's time for me to go find something else to do, and I reached out to Rob, and he's like, hey, come up to the pod, and you're cool, so I'll show you how it works inside. But it was. But what was super interesting is like they were doing customer testing that day, and so Rob just like put a sign out that said like, "Hey, free drinks," and like cars just like pulled in, and this was like such a shift for me because like the previous companies I've been working at, we would go off and we would develop our products, and like we had a set of specifications exactly what we were trying to do, and we would then go design it in the lab and get the prototypes and go through all the DVTs and all the the product validation tests that you need to do along the way, and then you get to the end of the line, and then you like hope the customer likes it, right? And like it's really disappointing to like spend so much time and effort like building this thing, and then just to find out like, oh, people don't actually want it. And maybe you missed the price point, maybe you missed the delivery window or something like that, or a lot of times you actually don't know why it ended up not fitting. But like having customers just like pull in and say, yeah, what is this thing? Tell me about it. I want this to work. It like totally flipped in my head of like, oh, this isn't just like designing to a specification or something like that. It's like there are customers here that want this, and we just need to build the technology to get there. And that is an execution problem. And those are super exciting to work on because you like have this pull of like, oh, I know I'm building the right thing. I just need to get it there. And those are fun things to work on for me.
So let me turn it to Jane and Rob real quick. One of the milestones we haven't really talked about at the beginning was the fact that the investment that you've had already gave you the opportunity to, actually bring on the CTO and somebody to, as you mentioned, Rob, kind of fill in the gaps where the existing team, needed some additional vision. You've gushed over Rory and his credibility, but what, for you guys, what was that point where you mentioned or you said, hey, we really could use some help now. Oh, and by the way, we can do this because we have, these wonderful investors that have supported us so far.
I don't think I realized quite how much I needed a Rory until I had one. And then, I was like, oh my gosh, because, I'm one of those inch deep, a mile wide kind of guys, whereas Rory is like a mile wide and a mile deep, right? So he can, go like, trace a problem, all the way back to the log, like he's just really just naturally very good at that. And so, yeah, being able to, pull on, not only the people, but also the equipment we need, and not have to like always scrimp on like, all right, well, we'll try this 20-cent connector thing, and if it doesn't work, we'll buy the $5 one. Like just saying, okay, we know what the right answer is here. We should just go do that, instead of, trying to always do things on a shoestring, because sometimes that really slows you down, right? And so being able to just, make, still budget conscious, but like just the right decisions, having that flexibility allows us to move just a lot faster, which is really, really cool to just like we feel like we're definitely more in control of our destiny in terms of budgeting and the ability to respond quickly to all of the customer response. Because Rory's right, like when we put in a new feature, like whether it's a label or a new offering or adding the second robot in to make things go faster, like we get to see the immediate results, like the immediate feedback from the customers. And so being able to move at that kind of speed and then test the next day and get the feedback and then keep iterating is super powerful for people like in our position. Like Rory said, we have people coming in whether or not we have the open sign out, right? They want to know what this thing is and they want to be part of it. It looks super cool. It's the brightest, most interesting looking thing in all of Hudson, New Hampshire, right? So having that there and being able to respond to it, being able to add in all those features and keep pushing is just awesome.
I would say that's probably one of the benefits and drawbacks of being in New England is there aren't a lot of boundaries when it comes to people stopping by. Everybody's a friend or a neighbor, and so they want to check that out. They also say that great teams recognize when they need great people, and the fact that Jane, you and Rob have both identified that there was a need and that Rory was the right fit to be the chief technical officer. It says a lot about you guys. So I want to jump in, Rory, with you a little bit. You had mentioned one of the biggest problems with the fully autonomous pod is what happens in queue. And we all have been through a drive-thru where we have, waited for an inordinate amount of time to get up to the window to either have our order or get our order and then it be wrong. And you mentioned that the approach that Ping has to that queuing problem is really something that you haven't seen anywhere else, and truly it's a trade secret and something that's patented. Talk a little bit about that, one car, being being the one that could ruin the whole line, and how you are looking at fixing that.
Yeah, it's so the challenge I think with other drive-throughs, and I was telling Rob and Jane, actually this happened to me like literally last night, is like you can get behind someone who really holds up the line. In this case, like it was an enormous order at a drive-through, and they were placing it on site. And so like the challenges with the drive-through is you're subject to all the cars that are coming in ahead of you and all the people that aren't necessarily doing things the right way. And like a lot of existing drive-throughs, they don't have any insight as to what's about to happen or where the cars are coming from or how many orders are on the way. They can't, like, there's no way to get ahead or anything like that. So I think what's really interesting about the way we're using this, like the sensor augmented geofence, is that we can have some insight as the pod is operating of like, here are the drinks that are coming, and we can start to get a much better idea as cars get closer of like what sequence they're going to arrive in. And the sequencing of the orders becomes pretty critical so that like we can just get the drinks out and get people to drive on site, recognize who they are, recognize the sequence that they've arrived at, identify them, get them their drinks, and get them back on their way. And the smoother we can make that process, the faster it is for everybody, the faster the throughput is. It's really a win-win to get cars through as fast as possible. So it's a super interesting problem to work on. A bunch of disparate data sources from the phone's location. We have some on-site sensors. We have some sensors on the phone that we take advantage of, and like combining those in really interesting and I think novel ways, I think really smooths out the process. And I think it's going to be one of the keys here.
Yeah. You also, and Robin, maybe this is for you too, is one of the things that's made working on this problem, as you're saying, and really it's a challenge. It's also what makes Ping so novel and unique, is also different than how you've worked on robotics in your other stops in your career, where previously you were mentioning that you're building something and then you're getting feedback once it was completed. Here, you sort of, I guess, Rob, you've created a cheat code. Talk a little bit about that, and then Rory, maybe have you comment after.
Oh yeah, I think the ultimate cheat code when developing robotics, and this is something I learned at Amazon, is using your own product. If you use your own robots, you have the ultimate cheat code, because you know exactly what goes wrong, what you need, when you need it, like how you're going to support it. Like, you control the environment, we control everything inside of the pod. Like, I mean, you have so much control over your robot that now you're able to move very, very quickly. And so that's why Amazon was able to scale so fast, right? One thing they would do is they wouldn't go into a brownfield or an old building. They would always go greenfield and make a new building so they could specifically design it around the needs of the robots. And we do that with every pod we build. Every pod we build is a greenfield, right? So we're able to be very flexible in terms of the way we support our robotics. And again, we get immediate feedback. If we put in a new label system or a new ingredient, we know next day whether or not customers are enjoying it, because we can survey them as they're walking out. It's like, hey, how's that new lid feel? Good? Yeah, no, oh, okay. And so being able to do that, I think is just it's the ultimate cheat code. You know exactly what you have to do. And like Rory was saying earlier, sometimes one of the hardest things about robotics is knowing what to build, and knowing that even if you build this perfectly, that people are going to love it and pull it in. And so being able to get that next day feedback, it's cheating, and I love it. So if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Yeah. The other thing is when you're building the whole system, you have the freedom to solve problems in the optimal way. I think if this was something where it's we had a big honking robotic arm and we're buying a bunch of pieces of expensive automation that all need to go together. When you run into a problem, you're forced down a path of well, we can only solve it this way by putting even more sensors on there. But it's because we own the whole pod, we can make some judgment as to, oh, this is a problem best solved with software or a different sensor or rearranging components into a different way that sidesteps this problem. You don't need to solve all the hard problems in the hard way. Sometimes there are clever solutions, which only gets unlocked when you have the whole thing available to you. So,
well, let's talk about that whole system and a little bit about the roadmap, because that's what's a lot of people want to know is what's on tap for you, what's coming. So one of the things on the roadmap are short-term plans. I think, Jane, have you go through what those milestones look like.
Of course. We today test with customers 3 times a week, getting that great feedback that we immediately put back into the robotics and the software and the hardware. Our plan is in the short term, therefore, to expand our hours per day, get into the real peak hours, really challenge the robotics and expand the days, and then eventually get to that 24/7 model that we're so excited about and go live. In the near term, in the middle term, we wanted to use this raise to build our next 3 pods. And with our 4 pods, now we're really testing that hub and spoke model, not just the robotics, but also the supply chain, the logistics, the operations day to day. Today, we're learning so much about those anyway, but on a 1 pod basis, what happens when we have 4 in the same region that we really need to take care of? How does that commissary service all of them well? How do we keep the quality of our experience going? What does it mean to scale? And then take those learnings, and then with our growing wait list of licensees, we now want to take those learnings and then scale to that larger arena of thousands of pods, right? 1 on every street corner. So yeah, that's really where we're headed. Lots of exciting runway ahead of us. Lots to do.
That's awesome. Rob, Rory, anything that you guys want to add in terms of maybe from the technical side?
Yeah, I think I could add just a little bit of like timing on when we think things will happen, and of course everything still has a little bit of flexibility, but we believe we're about 2 months away from being able to really start to expand our hours and start charging outside of the testing, which I think is great. And we're targeting really end of year to get to the 24/7 type of operation. So some things are a little further out, but I think the nearer term, getting the summer offering really up and running is like our near-term target that we're super excited about. We have all the right things in place. A couple things needed to be redesigned. Those are going very, very well. And so, the testing is going great for those. Integration, more testing, more testing. And, we'll be doing that throughout the summer.
Awesome. Rory, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'd add is that it turns out it's not just about the robot as well that's making the drinks. Is like part of what we're learning as we're doing this testing is like managing the whole experience and learning like what is the best way for us to interact with the customers that come on site that don't know how this works yet, and how do we direct them, and how do we onboard them in a simple, effective way that like makes them feel welcome and makes them want to like join this and come through and have a good experience, like even though they just drove up because they've been driving by for a month and like saw us there and want to know more about what's going on. So like there's the robotics bit, and that's getting better and smoother as time goes on. But there's also like, how do we handle our operations, and all the sort of back end stuff is also like coming along as well. So there's a bunch of learning that's going on. And it's like
one thing I'll point out about that back end operation, I don't remember if I attribute this to Jane or to Rob, but Jane, I know you've said that you're leery of timelines, especially the 2 months that we want to open, or in 2 months we want to open. You're committed to a 5-star experience for every one of our orders. Talk a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah, I think that we realize the scaling opportunity here is massive, but we never want to do that at the expense of the quality of experience. So absolutely, we don't want to take anyone's money unless we think that we're delivering a 5-star experience every time, super reliably and consistently in a really delightful way. I mean, to Rory's point, like, today is their site hosts 3 times a week, like a CTO out there every day talking to customers, super great. But part of it is like, they started thinking already about what our CRM system looks like, right? Like, how do we capture what people tell us in real time, the little snippets they tell us about their lives? And I mean, I think they really have become more and more embedded in our community. Like the other day, somebody showed up with some asparagus for them, like from their farm.
It was so good. It was so fresh. Oh my gosh. It's like some of the best asparagus I've had since I was a kid. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah. And somebody else showed up, and like they had a family member that was undergoing health problems, and they were in tears. Like, they're just starting to really like connect with our customers. And so how do we capture that? So every day it's exciting, because the thing also that is really exciting about Rory is that like sometimes we look at like systems or software we need, and like Rory just magics up things. Like he just magics like inventory management. Okay, like I think I can do this. Like CRMs, yeah, like let's build this, right? So for me, it's magic. I'm not technical, but like amazing.
No, it's magic. Yeah, let's call it magic.
Yeah, we'll call it magic. That's great. Rob, I have to call you out though. I can't think of a single childhood memory where I was like, man, I really love that asparagus. As an adult, yes, but as a kid, I don't know.
I grew up on a farm, fresh asparagus. I'm telling you, it's a whole different experience.
Fair enough. Well, I can see we don't have a lot of questions from our audience here, but we did have several that wrote in that wanted to be on that are not on the live session. So we wanted to get to them. So let me ask you guys about this, because one of them wrote in and said, robotics sounds amazing, but to your point, Jane, what happens when something breaks at 2 a.m.? How, and I bring that to you because of the site host, but how have you designed for 24/7 reliability without a human on site?
Yeah, do you want to go first, Rob? Or, yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
So, I think there's a couple things we think about in terms of reliability, and like obviously we want this to operate 24/7, and yet like while we're doing our testing now, we have a site host, and we expect that like during peak hours there'll be a site host, but the majority of the time the pod will be running unattended, and so like how do you keep an eye on it, and how do you make sure it's operating well is something we think about a lot. So like a couple things. So one is the pod design. We built in redundancy. So we have two separate podlets that are actually making the drinks, and we're pretty thoughtful about trying to keep them as isolated from each other as possible so you can get some true redundancy and minimize the single points of failure in the design as much as possible. And I think we're pretty close to keeping them fully isolated. So, but in addition, like when you're designing, to keep the design sort of simple and practical and default to that instead of the more elaborate solutions, which like introduces extra parts, and like parts that aren't there can't break, right? Like try to keep the design simple and robust and straightforward. It leads to a more reliable design and operation as well. And then there's also just like there's an aspect of like just we will be visiting the pod on a regular basis, and there are like certain steps and preventative maintenance and like things that we are learning now. Like these are the things you want to keep an eye on, and this is something you should check out every day. This is something you should check out once a week, and this is something that's more longer term. In developing this schedule and this checklist of steps that you should go through to maintain the effectiveness of the automation is turning out to be pretty helpful, and like I think we're learning a lot about this as we develop it. But then also like when stuff happens like at 2 o'clock in the morning or things like that, we certainly have built in like access so we can look and inspect the pod and see what's going on, like what are the operating conditions there. We do monitor the temperature, and we track this over time so we can like be proactive about any potential issues. And then so like when we come service a pod, you can like if you have a part that you think you're going to want to replace, you can like be prepared to do that. So these are the things that we're trying to think through. And it's funny, but like our office like it is across the street. I can't quite throw a ball from our office to the pod, but it's there. It's across the trafficy street, but it like even that distance forces like a certain like we're going to the pod, so should I bring something to the pod, and like thinking through like what needs to be done. Like it becomes a trip, and this is good. Like it's a 2-minute trip or less, but it's you start to think about it like almost remote operation. We sort of get that by virtue of just having an office that's in a literal, not the trailer, literally next door to the line. So,
that's great. Thank you very much. Rob, anything else to add to that? Are we good?
Honestly, Rory and I talk about this a lot, so we have pretty much exactly the same answer to this question, because that's our strategy right there. You just laid it out.
All right. So speaking of stuff that needs to be refilled, John just asked, are straws and napkins dispensed by the robots?
It's a good question. Right now, no. And so we actually use a sippy cup, so you don't need a straw. Some people have asked for it. I think it's really up to Jane in terms of when we think that's a high enough priority for us to come up with a good solution for it. But so far we've talked about dispensers, like automated dispensers, that sort of thing. But Jane, you want to take that?
Yeah, an interesting learning from our pilot is that we offered straws and napkins as optional because some people do want them. But what we found actually is that almost no one asked for napkins, which is great for the environment. But only half of our customers asked for the straw. So eventually we love to dispense straws. As Rob said, we do have a lid that's designed to be sipped from. And we don't get too many requests, but yes, it definitely is something that we'll build for customers going forward. But
I would say on average we do 40-ish drinks in a session, and I would say every other session maybe somebody asks for a straw these days.
Yeah. And the other great thing about having a lid with a large hole is because we're going to have great pebble ice. Like people are obsessed with pebble ice from Chick-fil-A, for example. They love to crunch it. It's like something that's really popular. So when we introduce that, then like the lid that we're using today will be easier to drink from and chew on that ice. So we're just thinking a lot about the details, but it was a really good question.
Cool. All right, you mentioned, Rob, I think you mentioned earlier about as you're building the pod and testing, say, a less expensive piece of a sensor or the robot or some other element and something that's more expensive. We do have a first-time investor that is asking about what their $250 investment actually would go towards. Does that small of an amount, $250, actually help the company in building hardware that's this complex?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and just to put it in perspective, I would say a majority of the components in a pod cost less than $250. I mean, we have $10 sensors, and you have those kind of sensors that are on your garage doors. Low cost, super reliable. They work every time, right? So, and we have those kind of sensors in our system. So yeah, absolutely. Like every bit counts for us, and being able to, go out and get one sensor and say, I should have a little bit of redundancy and have another $10 sensor there has saved our butts a couple of times. And then also making sure you have a spare, because if you have one, you have none, right? So all those sort of things really help out in terms of, giving us the flexibility to move quickly and be able to say, you know what, the $5 sensor is a little too cheap. The $20 sensor makes sense. The $50 sensor doesn't. So let's get the $20. And so before we would always default to like, let's try the $5 one first. If it doesn't work, then we move up to the 20. But sometimes that makes you a little bit slower. And so now I feel like we're making faster, but still very efficient decisions in terms of our part selection and things we need and want to use.
All right, so that's a great point, and I, certainly appreciate that. The investors do too. And you mentioned there the parts that go into building of the pods. You and Rory touched on this briefly a moment ago, but that's building each pod as a greenfield, so it's from the beginning. And the question is that came in, as you move from one pod to dozens to hundreds, what parts of the system actually get easier to replicate and what actually becomes more complex? Are they the same or are they different? I
mean, all the hardware gets easier at scale, right? Once you're able to, get, a higher quantity of parts, you get, economies of scale in terms of pricing, you get to have more, quality, controls put in place, all sorts of things, right? So all of that is great. But I would say the thing that gets a little bit harder is anything that involves people, right? So the people side of things where you might make an error, refilling a container and mislabeling it. Okay, so maybe the labeling system we have now will turn into more of an RFID tag that is automatic. So when you put it into the dispenser, it auto recognizes, and there are less chances for human error. So that's the kind of stuff that we would have to really think about as we scale and are thinking about in terms of like all the options that all the things we have to prioritize as we scale. Good deal. Rory, I put you on the spot here. No, I was kidding. I have a question just for you. We lost you for just a second. It's funny.
Definitely not a technical problem. I don't. Yeah. That would be someone else's problem.
Yeah. It could not happen to you. That question was, or the next one is for you in terms of, we've been at the Hudson site now since last November. And maybe this is something for you, Roy. What has been the most surprising technical hurdle, and how have we made these leaps so quickly? Or maybe it's a combination.
Yeah. Well, I'll go first. I guess so. Like one of the, I think you sort of expect there's a whole world of problems you sort of expect when you're making an outdoor robot, like sensors and temperature and sunlight is infuriatingly hard for roboticists to deal with. But what was, I think, surprising to me was how poor the cell coverage turned out to be at this site. Like a month after I joined, it was like fine, 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 and then like suddenly a third of our customers had no cell coverage, which is a super interesting problem to deal with. I mean, I think we had this notion that it was going to, this was obviously a thing we were aware of, but like to have it suddenly hit us so acutely was like kind of surprising. And
I guess we have to solve this problem now instead of later, like we thought. Yeah.
It became a now problem, and like jumped away up on the priority queue. But it was so it's been super interesting, and like I've been telling these guys, it's like I'm really glad it happened now, and that we didn't end up trying to solve it later, because I think we would have like probably gone down a bad path, like with some assumptions about how things were going to work. And so I think we've been able to sort of identify the problem. We ended up finding out the solution of like T-Mobile antenna stopped working, and they're not going to fix it. But by talking to our customers, being out there, like we're actually able to identify like, oh, this is a real problem. It's not that our users just like can't use technology. And I think if we were like sitting back in the lab and just kind of watching it, I think this might have been something that was easy to like pass off on like customers not knowing how technology works or something like that. But like it became clear like, oh no, this is a very real problem. And so we've been able to like rethink some of the aspects of the sensor augmented geofence of like, well, how do all the bits talk to each other, and can we make some adjustments to how it's architected to sort of sidestep a lot of those limitations? How do we take advantage of the customer's connection when they do have the connection, make sure we get all the data that we need and we're not like lagging behind and trying to do more on site, like trying to distribute when we collect the data and how we collect it, so we're not so reliant on a cell signal. Super interesting, hard problem that I didn't think we were going to need to deal with for a while. Because it's the future. Cell phones should work.
Yeah,
and,
of course. Yeah. But we're in New Hampshire, so that's why, right? Rob, anything to add to that? Or?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. That's the exact one I would go to. Like, it's 2026. We're in a populated area. We didn't expect that now would be the time that we'd be trying to figure that thing out. But then one of the other things I like to point out is just like the value of operating in a real world environment. He mentioned sunlight earlier, and we've had to make some adjustments to sensor placement, sensor types, and all that sort of thing, because gosh, when that sun, is just at the right angle, guess what? Some of those sensors didn't work quite right. So things that you just never find in a lab, building out in the real world, just it comes to light so quickly. Literally light so quickly. So those sort of things. I think we've really made the right choice in terms of like the timing when we decided to come here, and like the cycle of development that we were at with the robot versus. Like, when you're running, you have operation things that you have to figure out. And now that we're running, both robots, like, oh, we have twice as much inventory. We have like all this to manage. And so those things are all part of it. It's not just the robot, it's the people, it's the app, it's the signage, right? Jane came up with a great sign to send people over to the orders and over to the, direct to the pickup area. So like all those kind of things are super important. And you really just can't figure that out unless you're actually in situ in the real world.
Yeah. All right. So here's a little bit of a different take on the question. Thinking about competition. A investor wrote in and said, if a big coffee chain like Dunkin' or Starbucks decided to build their own robot pod, what is the Ping's moat that would prevent them from just copying you or being as successful as you?
I'll take this one just because my last job at Amazon was writing strategy docs for like, is this a make buy? And most of the time you want to buy it if you can, right? Because especially if that somebody has a 3-year head start on you. And smaller companies get to move really, really fast outside of like a really cumbersome process, and we have been moving very fast. So you have that going for us, for one. Two, one of our key pieces of intellectual property is around our sensor augmented geofence. And once people see how well that works and how quickly customers can move through a drive-through line, they're going to realize that geofence isn't enough. They need some sort of sensors with higher fidelity to get the accuracy and understand where each of those cars are in the line. And guess what? We already have that roadblock in place for them. We might consider licensing it to them for a very, very sweet deal, but that's something that they'll run into. And then I would say the other thing is there's a fair amount of complexity of different types of problems that you have to solve. And so every time we solve all these things that we're talking about, that moat gets deeper and deeper and deeper. It's not just time, it's just the number of problems that we've solved and just a wide variety of areas. And so we've made so much progress. I think it would be really hard for somebody to catch up. I mean, you can throw a lot of money at something, but it just doesn't replace also the expertise that we have on our team. We happen to have a very uniquely qualified team to develop all of this together. And also having the strong voice of the customer and listening to that strong voice of the customer, meaning Jane, has been super important for us. And we've learned that lesson a couple of times. Remember Peach, right? Like those sort of things, really, I think just are always going to put us up in front. We've talked to like the big players like Dunkin's and Starbucks and Chick-fil-A. And yeah, they're interested, but they're not talking in the right way yet. And they're not in the right mindset to be, developing fully automated systems, right? They want to use all their existing equipment. That's not how you succeed. They want to do their entire full menu. That's not how you succeed. And so that they're really, anchored by all of their historical labor-centric, processes. It's going to be really hard for them to, pull out of that, do something that's super fast, curated, and automatable, I think.
Yeah.
Like if you think about the main advantage that large QSRs or quick service restaurants have today, it's money, right? Like they can throw money at a problem. So the idea is like, if they can throw money at a problem, they can solve it. But if we look at like the innovators, for example, McDonald's, they do test and fail and they continue to innovate, but they got 80% of the solution on voice ordering and then they had to ditch it, right? So they're at heart, they are restaurant chains. They're not technologists, they're not engineers. Like just throwing money doesn't mean that it supersedes problems like culture. Like, do they move fast? Do they embrace innovation? Infrastructure, like their traditional brick and mortar. So when they do come up with technology solutions, it only addresses like 5% of the process. Whereas we're building from the ground up, we can reinvent the entire thing. So there are a lot of things which would stop their progress or take them down the wrong path. Like we've seen some invest in like $500,000 robot arms, right? Where that just doesn't make sense from a scaling point of view, from an investment point of view. But that was what an engineering team told them they should do. So like we're better positioned, I think. To succeed.
Speaking of that voice of the customer, they continue to, share loudly how much they love the ping pod and what it's producing. And this is something that came from, actually, I think somebody that listened to one of our podcasts and wasn't able to join the Q&A today because they specifically mentioned a stat that we used there in the morning ping that we mentioned 67% of our orders are from repeat customers. Do you think that people come back because of the robot's novelty, or is it the coffee is actually better than national chains, or is it something else?
I mean, we have a ton of regulars. We look at these numbers every day when we test with customers, and we see that the majority of our customers today are coming back, which is great. Great news for us if you think about like lifetime customer value and all of that. But So it's really strong. It's not a novelty. It's really about the convenience factor. So when we did an exit survey from our pilot, we asked the question of like, what could we have done better? What would have made you come back? And the top 3 things were more locations, more hours, and more ice. So these are all very addressable things, but what it tells us is it's not the experience, it's not the product, it's not any of those things. It's more literally give us more places to go to. So I think that's a good problem to have. And we just need a scale to get there.
Awesome. Well, that is all the questions that we have for tonight on this Q&A. Any final thoughts from any of you guys?
Yeah, if anyone has any follow-up questions they want to address with us directly, they're free to do so. We definitely welcome curiosity and love talking about our business.
Yeah, that's very, it's really, really exciting to be on this path with you guys. I really appreciate all that stayed on and watched our Q&A. Rory, our new CTO, welcome to the team.
Thanks. Yeah, it's super fun.
Yeah. Our next episode of the Morning Ping will go deeper and wider into a couple of these questions. So you'll listen to that on Spotify or YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Jane, Rob, as always, thank you so much for joining me for this.
Thanks, Justin. Great to be here.
For all of you that have stayed on and watched and that are watching this later, thank you also for being on this journey with us to invest or increase your investment. Please go to wefunder.com/ping. Again, that's wefunder.com/ping. And, I don't know, Rob, go ping yourself, right?
Yeah, that's right. Go ping yourself. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Cheers, everybody.